standing in Chapelfield Gardens, here in the city of Norwich. Behind me is a rather unusual wooden pillar. It was carved from a large oak trunk by local artist Mark Goldsworthy and commemorates the rather strange exploits of an Elizabethan comic actor. The actor in question was William Kemp. Will Kemp was a key player in a company of actors called the Lord Chamberlain's Men, whose most notable member was William Shakespeare. Will Kemp's strange feat was to dance from his home in London to Norwich, then England's second largest city. Will Kemp's dance to Norwich was undertaken in the early spring of 1600. Kemp conceived his dance as a commercial venture, and he invited spectators to gamble on his possible failure. As he passed through the countryside, he distributed pledges for a given sum in order that, if successful, he could recoup his stake threefold on his journey home. The Morris was completed in 9 days of actual dancing. However, in total, he was away for nearly a month, taking into account rest and bad weather breaks. The whole venture was documented and published, with a dedication to his patron Anne Fitton, in a pamphlet called The 9 Days' Wonder, from which we get the expression, "Oh, it's just a 9 days' wonder." The 9 Days' Wonder provides a daily account of Will Kemp's journey from London to Norwich, and its publication allows us a rare insight into life in late Elizabethan England. He opens the pamphlet by setting down his intentions, before castigating some unnamed ballad makers.
Kemp's 9 Days' Wonder, performed in a Morris from London to Norwich, wherein every day's journey is pleasantly set down to satisfy his friends the truth against all lying ballad makers, what he did, how he was welcome, and by whom entertained.
In the 9 Days' Wonder, Kemp describes himself as
Cavalier Kemp, headmaster of Morris dancers, high head borough of Hayes, and only tricker of your Trillillies, and best bell shangles between Sion and Mount Surrey.
To help him on his way, Kemp was accompanied by the pipe and tabor player Thomas Sly. The pipe and tabor player was, in effect, an Elizabethan one-man band. The musician played a drum, the tabor, with his right hand, whilst simultaneously playing a 3-holed pipe with his left. The technique required is rather like patting your head and rubbing your stomach at the same time. This instrumental combination was very popular in Elizabethan times and provided the ideal source of music for outdoor dancing. The preface to the 9 Days' Wonder introduces us to Thomas Sly.
I lowly beg pardon and leave, for my tabourer strikes his hunts up. I must to Norwich. Imagine, noble mistress, I am now setting from my Lord Mayor's, the hour about 7, the morning gloomy, the company many, and my heart merry.
But before we hear more about this epic Terpsichorean venture, who was Will Kemp? What did an Elizabethan comic actor do? And what sort of dance would he choose to attempt a 120-mile journey? In the late 1500s, there were numerous rogues, vagabonds and beggars performing plays and entertainments in London. So, as a result of a government clampdown, the Lord Chamberlain's men, together with 2 other theatre groups, were created. These were the only 3 bodies licensed to perform plays in the capital. The initial driving force behind the company was James Burbage, and the company consisted of a number of actor shareholders, including his son Richard Burbage and William Kemp. The clown or comic actor had an important role in most of Shakespeare's plays. For instance, in Twelfth Night, Sir Toby Belch is a high-spirited, hard-drinking counterbalance to the lovelorn melancholy that goes on around him. Many of Shakespeare's comic roles are thought to have been directly influenced by Will Kemp himself. Notable examples are Dogberry in Much Ado About Nothing and Peter in Romeo and Juliet. Stand-up comedians regularly appear on the stages of our modern theatres. Back in Kemp's time, the comic actor also had a crucial part to play. Once the scripted play was over, the clown then provided an entertainment of his own. This was known as the jig. It was largely unscripted, relying instead on improvisation, often based on interactions with the audience. Music, singing and dancing combined with physical comedy was all part of the often lewd performance. These jigs were performed at the end of tragedies as well as comedies to lighten the mood, literally providing comic relief. A major influence on Kemp's comic style was his predecessor in The Chamberlain's Men, Richard Tarleton. Tarleton's contribution to the Elizabethan stage was very important, and he is thought to have influenced the role of Bottom in A Midsummer Night's Dream, and was the model for Yorick in Hamlet. A contemporary account tells us that audiences began exceedingly to laugh when he first peeped out his head. Tarleton had a talent for improvising, not only at the end of the play, but also on the written text, which, though amusing for the audience, must have caused some consternation for the playwright. Kemp was also described in his time as jestmonger and vicegerent general to the ghost of Dick Tarleton. And it was said that Kemp succeeded Tarleton as well in favour of Her Majesty as in the opinion and good thoughts of the general audience. Both Tarleton and Kemp were capable musicians, and of course dance played an important role in the entertainment they provided. There were many types or styles of dance during the late Renaissance. The pavane and galliard were much favoured at court, whilst the brawl and morris were more likely to be danced in the streets and villages. The cultural and social importance of dance at this time is given in a contemporary account published in 1589 by Thomas Arbeau. Dancing is practised to reveal whether lovers are in good health and sound of limb, after which they are permitted to kiss their mistress in order that they may touch and savour one another, thus to ascertain if they are shapely or emit an unpleasant odour as of bad meat. The origins of the Morris dance are somewhat unclear, but it seems most likely that the name is a corruption of Moorish, that is, a dance performed by the Moors of North Africa. This theory is strongly supported by a series of wooden figures carved in Germany by Erasmus Grasser during the mid-15th century. Each of the figures depicts a character in the throes of a vigorous dance,
and dressed in typical North African costume. Some have pellet bells tied around their legs. The dance clearly involved much vigorous leaping, jumping and swirling body movements.
Walking the 120-odd miles from London to Norwich would be quite demanding, but to dance a Morris this energetic must have been a daunting prospect. However, this does not seem to have been Will Kemp's main concern. If we look at the preface of his 9 Days' Wonder, Kemp is more preoccupied with the danger of getting a bad press. He addresses his patron, Anne Fitton, thus:
Honourable Mistress, in the wane of my little wit, I am forced to desire your protection. Else every ballad singer will proclaim me bankrupt of honesty. A sort of mad fellow, seeing me merrily disposed in a Morris, have so bepainted me in print, since my gambols began from London to Norwich, that, having but an ill face before, I shall appear to the world without a face. Your fair hand wipe not away their foul colour.
As we heard, Kemp is concerned that his good name is to be damaged by some unnamed ballad singers. Broadside ballads were the tabloid newspapers of their day. They were printed on a single sheet and often illustrated with a simple woodcut. They were not published with written music, but instead there would be the suggestion of a suitable popular tune to which the ballad could be sung. It is therefore somewhat ironic that Kemp should fear the work of another ballad singer, as he himself would have sung comic and topical ballads as part of his own stage act.
Room for a lad that's come from the seas, hey jolly broom man, and gladly would now take his ease. Therefore give me room, man, to France, to Netherlands, and to Spain. Hey jolly broom man, I've crossed the seas and come back again, and therefore give me room, man. Yet in these countries there lived I, hey jolly broom man, and valiant soldiers I've seen die, therefore give me room, man. At Tilbury camp with Captain Drake, hey jolly broom man, I made the Spanish fleets to wake, and therefore give me room, man. And here I've now compassed the globe, hey jolly broom man, and I've returned as poor as Job, therefore give me room, man. Now I'm safe for eternity here, hey jolly broom man, is to you in a cup of your finest English beer, and therefore give me room, man.
So with Thomas Sly playing his pipe and tabor, Kemp set off from London at 7 o'clock in the morning on the first Monday in Lent, along with his servant William B. and an overseer, George Spratt. Passing through Whitechapel and on to Mile End and Stratford Bow, Kemp was cheered on by multitudes of Londoners who offered him cake and ale. He was not to be tempted by such diversions, fearing that they might slow his progress.
I had small rest with those that would have urged me to drinking. I warrant you, Will Kemp was wise enough to their full cups. Kind thanks was my return with gentlemanlike protestations as, truly, sir, I dare not. It stands not with the congruity of my health. Congruity, said I. How came that strange language in my mouth? The tabourer strikes alarm. Tickle it good, Tom. I'll follow thee. Farewell, Beau. Have over the bridge, where I heard say that honest conscience was drowned. It is a pity if it were so, but there's no matter belonging to our Morris. Let's now along to Stratford Langton.
Strike it up, tailors and papers and clavers, thou shalt be well for thy labour. Strike it up, tailors and papers and clavers, thou shalt be well for thy labour. The Morris were abundant, were it not for Martin of Compton. I will be blithe and brisk, let us skip and hop and dip, turn about in a rat, until very weary joys cast frisk. The Morris were abundant, were it not for Martin of Compton. I will be blithe and brisk, let us skip and hop and dip, turn about in a rat, until very weary joys cast frisk.
Kemp made his way out of the East End of London and on into the county of Essex. He rested at Ilford, where again he resisted the temptation to drink the ale offered to him. By now it had become dark, but not allowing himself to be deterred by this, Kemp describes how he set off by moonshine towards Romford.
Thursday being market day at Brentwood, Tom Sly was earlier up than the lark, and sounded merrily the Morris. The multitudes were so great at my coming to Brentwood that I had much ado to get passage to my inn. In this town 2 cut-purses were taken that with 2 others of their companions followed me from London. But these 2 die-doppers gave out when they were apprehended. Whereupon the officers bringing them to my inn, I justly denied their acquaintance, saying I remembered one of them to be a noted cut-purse, such as one as we tie to a post on our stage, for all people to wonder at when at play they are taken pilfering. This fellow and his half-brother being found of the deed were sent to jail. Their other 2 consorts have the charity of the town, and after a dance of Trenchmore at the Whipping Cross, they were sent back to London, where I am afraid there are too many of their occupation.
Kemp mentions a little-known fact that petty criminals were pilloried during performances at theatres like the Globe. In fact, the Elizabethan attitude to crime and punishment is certainly much different to modern-day treatment of offenders. Many petty crimes, such as begging and vagrancy, were subject to corporal punishment, more often than not by whipping. Whipping posts appeared at the end of the 1500s and mostly consisted of a post attached to the existing village stocks.
We come to the 3rd day of Will Kemp's dance from London to Norwich. By now he is well into his stride and making good progress through Essex.
At Chelmsford, a maid, not passing 14 years of age, made request to her master and dame that she might dance the Morris with me in a great large room. They being entreated, I was soon to fit her with bells and napkins on her arms, and to our jumps we fell. A whole hour she held out, but then, being ready to lay down, I left her off. But thus much in her praise that I would have challenged the strongest man in Chelmsford, and amongst many I think few would have done so much.
say if we're considering a trip from London to Norwich, we may choose to travel along the M11 and then onwards on the A11. But what were East Anglian road conditions like back in Kemp's day? When the 1555 Highways Act was passed, parishes were given the responsibility of the upkeep of their own roads. Each parish appointed surveyors of the highway, whose job it was to ensure that the roads and bridges within the parish were maintained. This was an unpaid and unpopular appointment, as they needed to make sure that all able-bodied parishioners were sent into the fields to pick stones with which the potholes were filled.
This foul way I could find no ease in, thick woods being on either side the lane likewise being full of deep holes. In this foul way 2 pretty plain youths watched me, and with their kindness somewhat hindered me. One, a fine light fellow, would be still before me, the other at my heels. My youth that followed me took his jump and stuck fast in the midst, crying out to his companion, "Come, George, call you this dancing?" Indeed, he could go no further till his fellow was fain to wade and help him out. I could not choose but laugh to see how like 2 frogs they laboured.
We get to Wednesday and the 5th day of Will Kemp's epic publicity stunt. The journey takes him from Essex and on into Suffolk, dancing all the way to Sudbury. Here Kemp meets a butcher who vows to keep him company all the way to Bury St Edmunds. The butcher had barely got a mile before giving up completely, claiming that he would not go on even for the sum of £100.
As he and I were parting, a lusty country lass called him a faint-hearted lout, saying, "If I had begun to dance, I would have held out 1 mile, though it had cost my life." At which words many laughed. "Nay," says she, "if the dancer will lend me a leash of his bells, I'll venture to tread 1 mile with him myself." I fitted her with bells, which she merrily taking, garnished her thick short legs, and with a smooth bow bade the tabourer begin. The drum struck, and forward marched I with my merry maid Marian, who shook her fat sides and footed it merrily, Melford being a long mile. There parting with her, I gave her, besides her skinful of drink, an English crown to buy more drink, for good wench she was in piteous heat. I bade her adieu, and to give her due, she had a good ear, danced truly, and we parted friendly.
Fine nats for ladies, cheap choice, brave and new. Good penny words, but money cannot move. I keep a fair, but for the fair to view, a beggar may be liberal of love. Though all my wares be trash, the heart is true, the heart is true.
Kemp's next destination was Bury St Edmunds. He rather inexplicably headed off towards Clare, which is definitely not, as he seemed to think, a shortcut. Either he was purposely misled or just made a navigational mistake. But either way, it cost him 6 extra miles.
Will Kemp reaches Bury on Saturday afternoon, where he revels in upstaging the Lord Chief Justice, who enters the town at another gate. Kemp claims that the crowds were so busy gawping at him they had no time to notice the dignitary. The weather in Bury prevented any further progress. It snowed hard, so Kemp stayed in the town for 6 days until it was clement enough to continue. Although the town was busy with visitors, Kemp had no difficulty finding lodgings, as he appears to have been a regular visitor to the town and takes rest at his usual inn.
Friday morning, Will Kemp sets out towards Thetford. He seems to have recovered a great deal of his energy, as he covers the 10 miles between Bury and Thetford in just 3 hours.
I fared like one that had escaped the stocks and tried the use of his legs to outrun the constables. So light was my heels that I counted 10 miles no better than a leap. At my entrance into Thetford, the people came in great numbers to see me. The noble gentleman, Sir Edwin Rich, gave me entertainment in such bountiful and liberal sort during my continuance there Saturday and Sunday, and at my departure on Monday, his worship gave me £5.
Kemp was now in Norfolk, with only some 30 miles to go before arriving in Norwich. Resting at Rockland, he is finally met by an unnamed host who is described as dressing in the height of fashion.
He enters the hall with his bonnet in his hand and began to cry out, "Oh dear, Master Kemp, you are even as... And so stammering, he began to study for a fit comparison. At last he saith, "Thou art even as welcome as the Queen's best greyhound." I took his good meaning and gave him great thanks for his kindness, and having rested me well, began to make my course to Hingham.
Leaving Hingham, Kemp's dance took him on to Barford Bridge, with Norwich almost in sight.
By now it was Wednesday, and in order that as many people as possible could witness his grand entrance into the city, it was decided that he would postpone his arrival until Saturday.
Saturday no sooner came, but I returned without the city through St. Giles his gate, and began my morris, but entered in at St. Stephen's gate, where one Thomas Gilbert, in name of all the rest of the citizens, gave me a friendly and exceedingly kind welcome. It follows in these few lines. Master Kemp, his welcome to Norwich. With heart and hand among the rest, especially you welcome are, long looked for as welcome guest. Come now at last, you be from far. Of many within the city sure, many good wishes you have had. Each one did pray you might endure with courage good the match you made. Intend they did with gladsome hearts, like your well-willers you to meet. Know you also they'll do their parts, either in field or house to greet. More you than any with you came, procured thereto with trump and fame.
This well-meant little ditty from Thomas Gilbert also spells out "Welcome Will Kemp" with the first letter of each line of the verse.
As Kemp makes his way through Norwich, he is helped by the whifflers.
A cross between a modern policeman and an usher, the whifflers were employed by town clerks to clear the way for large civic processions.
Passing the gate, whifflers, such officers as were appointed by the mayor, helped to make me way through the throng of people which pressed so mightily upon me. With great labour I got through that narrow street into the marketplace, where, on the cross, ready prepared, stood the city waits. Such waits few cities in our realm have the like, none better, who, besides their excellency in wind instruments, their rare cunning on the viol and violin, their voices be admirable, every one of them able to serve as choristers in any cathedral church in Christendom.
In Tudor times, the city waits were the official town band, and every self-respecting town and city employed their own waits. Their job was to provide music for special civic occasions, ceremonies, and the occasional high-profile wedding. The musicians in a waits band were, as Kemp suggests, expected to be proficient on a number of different instruments, along with the possession of a good singing voice. Kemp's praise of the Norwich waits was probably quite justified, as none other than Sir Francis Drake had taken some of these Norwich musicians aboard his ship to provide entertainment whilst at sea.
Leaving Norwich marketplace, Kemp was again surrounded and hindered by people eager to see him.
Indeed, the crush resulted in a slightly embarrassing incident for one young woman. Moving on rather swiftly, Kemp jumps a wall at St. John's Church. Both the wall and church are still standing, just opposite the site of the modern Maddermarket Theatre.
And coming unluckily in my way, as I was fetching a leap, it fell out that I set my foot on her skirts. The point, either breaking or stretching, off fell her petticoat from her waist. The poor wench was so ashamed that now had she her cheeks all coloured with scarlet. I was sorry for her, but on I went to the mayor's and deceived the people by leaping over the churchyard wall at St. John's. I return again to my jump, the measure of which is to be seen in the Guildhall at Norwich, where my buskins that I then wore and danced in from London thither stand, equally divided, nailed on the wall.
Kemp ends his endeavour with his dancing shoes, his buskins, nailed to the wall of the Norwich Guildhall. Of course, the whole enterprise had been a wager, a bet with an unspecified number of people as to whether or not he would succeed and complete the course. Had it been a success? Well, he did complete the course. He covered the 120-odd miles that separate London and Norwich, and in the way he proclaimed he would. According to his account, he tripled his initial investment. Some of those who had laid bets paid up immediately, but quite a number of others suddenly seemed to vanish. However, he had £5 that he had received from Sir Edwin Rich in Thetford, and the Mayor of Norwich, Roger Weld, also gave him £5, along with an annuity of 40 shillings per year.
For Kemp, the experience seems to have been tainted by the pasting he considers he received at the hands of the ballad makers. It is not clear precisely what lies were supposed to have been told about Kemp, but it appears that they originated from Shakespeare's stage, as he refers to his critics as shaker-rags. In fact, the final epilogue is a tirade of amusing invective that he hurls at the ballad makers.
I know you to be a sort of witless beetleheads that can understand nothing but what is knocked into your scalps. These are by these presents to certify unto your blockheadships. I would have apparelled your dry pates in party-coloured bonnets, and bestowed a leash of my cast bells, to have crowned ye with coxcombs.
Kemp had been a very important part of Shakespeare's Elizabethan theatre.
After his dance to Norwich, he had no more to do with the bard. Instead, he worked with Thomas Heywood as part of the Earl of Worcester's men.
Over 30,000 people died of the plague in the summer of 1603, and Will Kemp was one of them. He died penniless, and he was buried without a trace in the confusion of the time, only 3 years after his energetic dance to Norwich.
A sad end to our story, but Kemp lives on in the words he wrote describing his strange and heroic dance from London to Norwich.
So we will let Will Kemp have the last word.
I crave pardon and conclude this first pamphlet that ever Will Kemp offered to the press, being thereunto pressed on the one side by the pitiful papers pasted on every post, and on the other side urged thereto in duty to express with thankfulness the kind entertainment I found.